Hello, students. Welcome to 2021 Release Questions for Biology from the state of Ohio. Question number 1. Scientists and doctors have observed that many species of bacteria are no longer susceptible to antibiotics that were once effective. Which statement explains why some bacteria species are no longer susceptible to certain antibiotics? A. The bacteria learned to avoid the antibiotics? I've never heard of that before. B, the bacteria modified the antibiotics to make them more effective? Bacteria modifying antibiotics? C, the bacteria that survived the antibiotics passed the resistance to future generations? Or D, the bacteria that were susceptible to the antibiotics produced a greater number of offsprings? Well, the answer, as we all know, is C. The bacteria that survived the antibiotics passed the resistance to future generation. In other words, the bacteria that was resistant were the fittest. They were able to survive and reproduce. So that is our answer, C. Question number 2. The transcription of a DNA molecule into a messenger RNA molecule and the translation of that messenger RNA molecule can occur simultaneously in prokaryotic cells. This does not occur in eukaryotic cells. Which statement explains why transcription and translation can occur simultaneously in prokaryotic cells, but not in eukaryotic cells? First of all, let's look at some of the words in our question. Prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus. Remember, pro means no. Eukaryotic cells have a nucleus and they have little organelles. Now, what is transcription and translation? Remember when we talked about DNA to RNA to protein? When the DNA made the messenger RNA in the nucleus of a eukaryotic cell, that was transcription. When the messenger RNA left the nucleus, went out to the ribosomes, and started making proteins, that was called translation. So now we understand the important words in question number 2. So let's look at A. Prokaryotic cells have more mitochondria to produce energy. First of all, prokaryotic cells do not have organelles, so we can eliminate that answer. B. Prokaryotic cells lack a nucleus to separate the two processes. Let's think about that and come back to it. C. Eukaryotic cells do not create amino acids until transcription is complete. And D. Eukaryotic cells lack ribosomes to translate the messenger RNA for protein synthesis. Well, we know eukaryotic cells have ribosomes. So now we have narrowed it down to B and C. And the answer is B. If the prokaryotic cells lack a nucleus to separate the two processes, then they're going from DNA to RNA to protein pretty easy because they don't have a nucleus that separates the two processes. So that's our answer, B. Question number 3. The diagram shows the karyotype of a muscle cell from a wild sheep. Here's our karyotypes. As you guys know, these are homologous chromosomes. So let's look at our questions. Select the 3 correct statements based on the information contained in this karyotype. The sheep is male. Well, all we have to do is look at the sex chromosomes. XX is a female. XY is a guy. So our sheep is a male, so it's not a female. Sheep somatic cells are diploid. Remember, somatic cells are the ones that are not the sex cells. So in this case, yeah, there's 2 of them. We got the chromosomes from mom and dad. So our sheep somatic cells are diploid. They're not in half. They're not haploid. Now, our sheep gametes, remember gametes are sperm and egg. Our sheep gametes contain 26 chromosomes, or do they contain 27 chromosomes? And as you know, they have 27 chromosomes. You notice there are 54 chromosomes there if you count them, but the gametes would only have half that amount. In this case, looking at the karyotype, it would be 27. Question number 4. For normal nerve transmission in mammals, nerve cells maintain specific concentrations of potassium and sodium ions. Concentration of sodium ions are normally higher outside the cell and lower inside the cell, while potassium ions are normally lower outside the cell and higher inside the cell. However, cell membranes are impermeable to sodium and potassium ions. The diagram shows the relative concentration of ions in solutions inside and outside the cell. So if we look at our diagram here, we can see is what the instruction said. The potassium is lower on the outside of the cell than it is on the inside of the cell. The sodium, on the other hand, is higher than on the outside of the cell than it is on the inside of the cell. Remember, this is our cell membrane. Remember beach balls with legs? Okay, bilayer, 2 layers. So let's look at our questions. Which process describes how a nerve cell maintains homeostasis in regards to sodium and potassium ion concentrations? Okay, they're telling us that the cell membrane is impermeable. That means the sodium and ion just can't go through the cell membrane. So how are we going to maintain homeostasis when we can have the same amount of sodium and potassium on both sides of the cell? Well, we'd have to use active transport. Remember, when we have passive transport, diffusion, we go from a high concentration to low, okay? But when we use active transport, we need active transport to go from a low concentration to high. And that involves using ATP, and it involves using a protein pump. So let's see what our choices are. Okay, so which process describes how a nerve cell maintains homeostasis in regards to sodium and potassium ion concentration? By converting the sodium ions present inside the cell into potassium ions? I don't think it can make changes like that. By blocking both types of ions from moving in and out of the cell? By transporting both types of ions to a protein pump within the cell membrane. And that would be our answer. We need a protein pump, and we need ATP to go from a high concentration, from a low concentration to a high concentration. Again, we need a protein pump for the sodium to go to the outside, and we need a protein pump for the potassium to go to the inside. Question number 8. And you know we had to have a question about electrophoresis. Sponges are marine organisms that can reproduce both sexually and asexually. Gel electrophoresis was used to analyze the DNA of 6 sponges that share a common parent. The gel electrophoresis results are shown. Select all the sponges that were most likely produced by asexual reproduction. So if we have sexual reproduction, their DNA is going to be different. But if they produce by asexual reproduction, they're going to be the same. So let's look here. We have A. B's not certainly like A. But, hey, A and C look very much the same. And A, C, and E look very much the same. So that's our answers. A, C, and E. Here's a question that's labeled number 7. Rock pocket mice live in the American Southwest. Millions of years ago, the region's rocks and sand were light colored. About 1.7 million years ago, volcanic eruptions made the rocks and the sand dark colored. Determine phenotype frequency, data that corresponds to the effect of the volcanic eruptions. Click on the graph above each phenotype to show the data. Remember, phenotype is what you look like, the physical appearance. So millions of years ago, 2 million years ago, the light color was the most prominent. So let's make that light color more than 50%, okay? Let's make it 80%. And let's make our dark color 20%. That gives us 100%, right? So we've met the our graph, we did it properly because we have more light colored 2 million years ago than we do dark color. But now let's go to present day after the volcano happened. In this case, let's make our dark color 80% and let's make our light color 20%. So they both equal 100%. All you have to do on this one is whatever is the most the prominent color, you need to make that above 50%, and the one that's below, that's not as prominent, that shows up the least amount of time, you show that below 50%. Okay, and they got it both add up to 100%. So this is a fairly easy question. And I think this will be the last one for 2021 Release Questions Part 1. Thank you.